Picture this. You're sitting in an airport terminal, and you notice someone shuffling past in worn-out sneakers, faded jeans, and a baseball cap that's seen better days. They're clutching a coffee from a generic chain and heading toward the economy boarding line. Your brain instantly categorizes them. Student, budget traveler, definitely not wealthy. But here's what most people miss, and it's costing them more than just their judgment skills. That person you just mentally dismissed, they might be worth more than everyone in that terminal combined. And they're dressed that way on purpose. This isn't about being frugal or cheap. This is about understanding something that separates those who build lasting wealth from those who just look wealthy. Today, we're going deep into the psychology, the strategy, and the counterintuitive brilliance of why truly wealthy people actively work to appear poor. And by the end of this, you'll understand why adopting this mindset might be the smartest financial decision you never considered.
Let's start by addressing the obvious question. Why would someone who has the money to afford first-class tickets, designer everything, and luxury vehicles choose not to? The answer isn't what most people think. This isn't about being humble or down to earth, though those might be nice side effects. This is about playing defense in a game where the stakes are incredibly high. When you display wealth openly, you're not just showing success, you're painting a target on yourself. And I'm not being dramatic here. The wealthy understand something fundamental about human psychology. The moment people know you have money, their entire relationship with you changes. Suddenly, you're not just a person anymore. You're a resource. You're an opportunity. You're someone who can solve their problems, fund their dreams, or become a story they tell about inequality. Think about it from a purely tactical standpoint. Every luxury item you display, every expensive habit you reveal, every status symbol you carry, it's all information. Information that can be used against you in negotiations, lawsuits, divorces, custody battles, and tax audits. When you walk into a car dealership wearing a $10,000 watch, you've already lost the negotiation before it started. The salesperson now knows you can afford more, so why would they give you their best price? When you post vacation photos from exclusive resorts, you're giving tax authorities a reason to look closer at your returns. When you wear designer logos everywhere, you're attracting people who value you for what you have, not who you are. But it goes deeper than that. The ultra-wealthy have learned that visibility equals vulnerability. There's a reason why the Forbes list of billionaires doesn't include many of the actual richest people on the planet. The ones who really understand wealth accumulation have structured their assets in ways that keep them off lists, out of tabloids, and away from public scrutiny. They've learned that the richest person in the room is usually the one you wouldn't notice. Now, let's talk about what I call the camouflage advantage. And this is where things get really interesting because it applies whether you have millions in the bank or you're just starting to build wealth. When you blend in, you become invisible to threats. And in today's world, those threats are more diverse and dangerous than ever before. Consider the digital landscape we live in. Social media has created a culture of constant performance where people broadcast their lives like they're running a personal reality show. And criminals are watching. Not just street criminals, though they're certainly paying attention. I'm talking about sophisticated operators who use social media to identify targets for everything from home invasions to kidnapping to complex financial scams. When you post that new luxury car in your driveway, you've just advertised your address and the fact that you have valuable items worth stealing. When you check in at an expensive restaurant across town, you've told potential burglars that your home is empty. But the camouflage advantage extends far beyond physical security. It's about social dynamics and power structures. When people underestimate you financially, they reveal their true intentions faster. That business partner who's all smiles when they think you're broke, but suddenly becomes demanding when they discover you have money? You've just learned something valuable about their character. That friend who sticks around when you're driving a modest car, but disappears when you can't fund their lifestyle? You've identified a relationship that was never genuine to begin with. The truly wealthy use this as a filtering system.
By appearing ordinary, they create an environment where people interact with them based on actual value, not perceived resources. They build relationships with people who are interested in them as humans, not as walking ATMs. And when they do choose to reveal their financial status, it's strategic. It's on their terms, in their timing, for their purposes. There's also a psychological component here that most people completely miss. When you're constantly displaying wealth, you're living in a state of performance anxiety. You have to maintain that image. You have to keep up appearances. You have to upgrade continuously just to stay relevant in the eyes of people whose opinions shouldn't matter to you in the first place. But when you opt out of that game entirely, when you choose invisibility over visibility, you reclaim something far more valuable than status. You reclaim peace of mind.
Here's where we need to talk about the darker side of visible wealth and why so many people who look rich are actually trapped in what I call the consumption spiral. There's this fascinating principle in behavioral economics called the Diderot Effect, named after an 18th century French philosopher who received an expensive gift and then felt compelled to upgrade everything else in his life to match it. And this principle explains why so many high earners are still living paycheck to paycheck despite making six figures or more.
The consumption trap works like this. You get a promotion or a windfall and you decide to treat yourself. Maybe it's a luxury watch or a designer bag or a high-end car. And initially it feels amazing. You've earned it, right? You deserve nice things. But then something insidious happens. Your brain recalibrates. That luxury item becomes your new baseline, your new normal. And suddenly everything else in your life looks cheap by comparison. Your nice watch doesn't match your old clothes. Your designer bag looks out of place with your budget shoes. Your luxury car makes your apartment feel inadequate.
So you upgrade, and upgrade again, and each time you tell yourself this is the last one. This is where you'll stop. But you won't, because you can't. You've triggered a psychological mechanism that's incredibly hard to shut off. This is what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. You keep running, keep spending, keep upgrading, but the satisfaction never lasts. The happiness you felt from that first purchase becomes harder and harder to replicate, so you spend more trying to chase that same feeling. And here's the really devastating part. The people most likely to fall into this trap aren't the ultra-wealthy. They're the aspiring wealthy, the ones making good money but not great money, the ones who want to signal success before they've actually achieved it. Studies have shown consistently that the biggest purchasers of luxury goods, the ones with the logos and the status symbols, are middle-class consumers trying to look upper-class. They're using expensive items as social currency, buying their way into a perception of success rather than building actual wealth. Meanwhile, the actual wealthy are doing the opposite. They're driving cars that are paid off. They're wearing clothes without visible branding. They're living in houses that don't scream their net worth to everyone who drives by. Why? Because they understand something crucial. Every dollar spent on impressing others is a dollar that's not working for you. It's not invested. It's not generating returns. It's not buying you freedom. It's just gone, exchanged for a fleeting moment of social validation from people whose opinions have zero impact on your actual quality of life. This is the trap that keeps people broke despite high incomes. They're optimizing for appearance rather than reality. They're playing a game where the only way to win is to stop playing. And the wealthy figured this out a long time ago. Now let's talk about what might be the most compelling reason to embrace strategic invisibility. And it's something that money can't buy once you've lost it. Freedom. Real, genuine, uncompromised freedom. The freedom to move through the world without being watched, analyzed, judged, or targeted. The freedom to make decisions based on what you actually want rather than what maintains your image. The freedom to have genuine human connections that aren't colored by what you have or what you can provide. Think about the most famous wealthy people in the world, the ones whose faces are instantly recognizable. Now think about what their lives actually look like. They can't go to a grocery store without security. They can't take their kids to a park without photographers following them.
They can't have a bad day in public without it becoming a news story. They can't trust that new people in their lives are interested in them as humans, rather than as opportunities. They've traded privacy and normalcy for visibility and status, and many of them would tell you it wasn't worth it. There's a reason why some of the smartest, wealthy people you've never heard of have stayed that way intentionally. They've watched what happens when wealth becomes public, and they've decided they want no part of it. They've chosen the freedom to live life on their own terms over the status of being recognized. They can travel without security details. They can send their kids to normal schools. They can have genuine friendships where money isn't the subtext of every interaction. They've essentially bought invisibility, which might be the most valuable commodity in a world obsessed with visibility. And this freedom principle applies at every wealth level, not just billionaire status. When you're the person who doesn't flash money around, you're free from the expectations that come with visible wealth. Your family members aren't constantly asking for loans. Your friends aren't expecting you to pick up every check. Your neighbors aren't judging your political views based on your house size. You're free to live according to your values rather than others' expectations. There's also a psychological freedom that comes with opting out of the status game entirely. When you're not trying to impress people through material possessions, you're free to focus on what actually matters: your work, your relationships, your health, your personal growth. You're no longer expending mental energy on maintaining an image or worrying about whether you're keeping up with perceived peers. That mental bandwidth is incredibly valuable, and most people waste it on concerns that add zero value to their lives. So how do you actually implement this strategy in your own life, regardless of your current wealth level? Because here's the truth. You don't need to be a millionaire for this approach to benefit you. In fact, the earlier you adopt this mindset, the faster you'll actually build real wealth. Let me break down the practical applications. First, understand that strategic invisibility isn't about deprivation. It's not about living like you're poor when you're not. It's about intentional choices that prioritize substance over appearance. It's about spending money on things that genuinely improve your quality of life, rather than things that signal status to others. Maybe that means driving a reliable used car that's paid off, instead of leasing a luxury vehicle. Maybe it means buying high-quality basics instead of logo-covered designer pieces. Maybe it means living in a modest home in a good neighborhood instead of stretching for a house that screams wealth. Second, use underestimation as a strategic advantage. When people assume you have less than you do, they show you who they really are. They can't fake interest in your money if they don't think you have any. This is particularly valuable in business relationships, romantic relationships, and new friendships. The person who's kind to you when they think you're broke is someone whose character has been tested. The person who only shows up when they think you can benefit them has revealed their true nature. Third, redirect the money you save from not status signaling into actual wealth building. This is where the strategy compounds. Every dollar not spent on impressing others can be invested, saved, or used to build income-generating assets. Over time, this gap between people who look rich and people who are rich becomes a chasm. The person driving the luxury lease is paying hundreds monthly to appear successful. The person driving the paid-off sedan is investing those hundreds monthly into assets that grow. 5 years later, one of them has a depreciating vehicle and ongoing payments. The other has a growing investment portfolio. Fourth, create boundaries around financial information. You don't owe anyone explanations about your money, your choices, or your lifestyle. The question, "Can you afford that?" doesn't require an honest answer. The request to loan money doesn't require justification when you decline. The assumption that you're broke because you don't display wealth doesn't need correction. Your financial life is private information, and keeping it that way protects you from manipulation, pressure, and unwanted scrutiny. Here's what it all comes down to. In a world where everyone is performing wealth, real wealth operates in silence. The richest person you know might be the one you'd never suspect, living in a normal house, driving a normal car, wearing normal clothes, and building extraordinary financial security behind the scenes.
They've figured out that the game of looking wealthy is designed to keep you from becoming wealthy, that status symbols are expensive distractions from status reality, that the respect you gain from displaying wealth is surface level and temporary, while the security you build by accumulating it quietly is deep and lasting. So the next time you see someone and make assumptions about their wealth based on appearance, remember this. You might be looking at someone who's mastered the ultimate wealth strategy, someone who's chosen freedom over flash, substance over symbols, and real security over perceived status. Someone who understands that in the game of wealth, the players who win are the ones nobody knows are playing.